frangible nut, explosive bolt. I cannot believe that language is an unbreachable wall around a nothing. At some point, after I had long walked the soles off my feet, and the blisters crept between my toes, then up and over their knuckles, and my gym socks attached themselves by coagulate to those blisters, had torn them away. Some new and painful awareness remained, still out there walking. In the absence of skin, I realized that language was doing something that I wasn't in control of. Every statement that I wrote down would wing a multitude of quills, furious, that scribed the inverse arguments of everything I have wanted to say. I was, in fact, writing myself, 1,000 deaths fully fleshed, in my spreading ink, myself palimpsest. What walls and what alone, this wolves, carrion muzzles dipped like quills into the quivering, unconsenting me, into what survives, the rusted fur of the drinking ink all-mouth, the sinew that follows in the wake of the pack, sinew tensed with electrical discharge, triggered by the need of countless of contagion the individual dies like the tree, stripped bare, this mottled gray husky kept unfed in the cramped run behind the institution yellow house, carving us from the blue with the blue-black stack of bald tires in the near snow of a chain-link backyard she no longer recognizes dog. Traces slip through our territorial divisions to lose herself in the anti-cartography of her red charge into flight of packs fleeting. I wasn't in control of every statement that I wrote down. Looking into the Gemini space capsule, who will you find to love you? The shortest way to travel between 2 points is to find your singularity. I have the gift of going nowhere fast. If each of us is nested inside the other, if we are the womb of root and branch and safety glass, altimeter, artificial horizon, attitude indicator, if we are zero altitude, zero airspeed ejection seats, then what courage it takes to stay shot into space, or left behind here on the ground. What love to learn to disarm these frontal lobes so that when the enemy erodes, we find ourselves, lost to sons and daughters. Pull the coiled black and yellow D-ring rigged overhead to escape the cabin fire. Pull down the mask at last, mother, father, oxygen hose trailing life into the hard vacuum of hospital beds as the explosive bolts let loose. Jettison us into some new free space. We learn to hug ourselves, each other, nested in our branches, our roots, womb of all one being. Wing a multitude of quills, a furious quivering of weed-drawn bow. What assures us that these divisions we make are not themselves composed of that wildness, that the links that make the chains of fence aren't themselves community, that our dogs that demur and prant are not themselves coyote, coy wolf, dingo, hyena, wendigo, that the pantomime of human dogs display, that we display, is not just the slow coagulate of habit, nothing to do with the flow of us, what we identify ourselves as, that the cells and water and bacteria that compose us cannot come and go based on their needs through the wall of us. We own nothing, not even the blood that howls with the snap-slap of loosed string that whizzes past our ear and clenched jaw. Inscribed the inverse arguments of everything I have wanted. I am, in fact, writing myself, 1,000 deaths fully fleshed, in the spreading ink, my absent self, the first he that had no choice but to stay and burn in the experimental aircraft as it fell from the sky. The he after he was made too, by the tail fin passing through his and his body. Then the next, he split his legs off at the knees that flared outward as he egressed, a bloom thrown inside out into unfriendly sky, the jaw of the smoking fuselage still gripping khaki scrap of upper thigh in its final descent. Each practical counter measured against what will survive, what best and most often. Mad terror of parenting someone, pushed unexpected into the fall, cold from the fire-vomiting fractured house, its bone and wood truss superheated by the fuel of itself, what it carried on to sustain our flight. It is always someone's leg, someone's back, or the more unlucky one, uncleft face passing through the cleaving stained glass canopy of self, then the drogue chute, thrust into the slipstream that drinks its fill like a wedding dress, posing with its train in the surf, for photos, drinks its fill of the ocean, drags its occupant out into the riptide and down. Palimpsest, I cannot believe language is unbreachable, a wall around nothing. So draw attention to its breath, that we all breathe. Exhale that egress that flings the misery of the abandoned husky into the midnight sky of roped throats, the falling through the gallows of exile, this sought-for loneliness of convict, of conviction, lumbared by the flat sawn tree, its rut of black fungus, the spalt that feeds the dangling dead feed the cat-rasp texture of woolen tongue. They are always with us, and inside cleansing what we leave behind unfed. And the blisters crept between my toes, then up and over my knuckles, my nose. Then the sickness like ink in the lungs came when every single home was strapped to the top of an ICBM, ready to go. Like our first manned missions into space, once liftoff begins, you are committed to the family in the way the branch that reaches for Luna's face still feels its roots not far from the origins of its birth, the seedling. I see my son reflected on the surface in a pane of safety glass wrapped around the Gemini re-entry vehicle, a burned whorl pattern in its heat shield matching the copper coil of his hair, and the shock of his half-smile, barely visible in the half-life fluorescent of the museum of light, of the museum of some of all these shallow orbits of our days, the glory of cold cereal in the morning, eaten alone, his stern, brave face at the mirror, brushing his teeth and confronting each day through the subway tunnel of school, unrequited as we are, folded into the preceding generations of each other. The cars rock shuttle, shove into each other the fear that the low-slung bully, rising up from the scattering ballast, is more real than the boogeyman growing within that tells us, be prepared, bide your time, they will come. Some new and painful awareness, still out there walking in the absence of skin, alone. This wolves, this burn behind a fence left in the frost, of the coarse sand, each movement of the furry pack, an echo and projection of all other movement, each being's right to thrive, assured to be an enemy when so restrained, foodless, made dog, of yard and empty belly. We assure the chain-link wildness, this dog become again wolves, this barren tree become again us blooded, on our own climbed crosses, this small charge that sets us free from attachments. The memory of my mother, her words traveling up the string to my canned ear. He can't tell you how much he loves you. Her mouth in another tin can repeats this across the years, screams it, and I up in the tree, laughing, not hearing anything along the quivering string. that we leap across life through these strings is a given. She watches the tree limb bend and snap under me, sawn through by my will. But it is my father that falls, not me. His frail, overworked body, the traveler, his leg snaps at the ankle, the bone jutting through the jet of howling blood. He holds back with cupped hands. The kneecap slipped from its place, and all the boys circle laughing at him. I want to be the boys kicking the boy, and the boy being kicked. Be the split lip sucked between your teeth, and held by your breath when you are too afraid to cry. And soon all these boys will forget, but I won't. I want to stomp on the small bird of his hand, and scream, I cannot tell you I love you. I cannot tell you I love you. And now, my son, I see the memory of my father looming up from the safety of the unpaved half parking lot of the broken back Kmart. Its sign sells leering red sails. I remember this gifted man who wanted to write, a delicate spirit and a natural athlete, gently curled around my younger self, teaching me to read, how to read the verse from the prophet and the giving tree. The glory of the climb, our birthright, boy. My mother holds her mouth to the disconnected can of the sky and screams all we cannot say.